Welcome, welcome, welcome to the summary of the full book of ELIE Wiesel's Night. The book starts off in 1941, when ELIE is 12 to 13 years old. His father is a prominent member of the Jewish community, and he has a mother, two older sisters, and one younger sister. ELIE distinguished himself from other boys by studying Jewish texts, most notably the Kabbalah. Very unusual for someone his age. It was also against his father's wishes. He found this teacher, Moshe DePito, who was willing to teach him, and they started off right away. However, eventually, Moshe DePito was deported as he was a Jew and a foreigner. All foreign Jews were to be deported by the German government. Miraculously, Moshe DePito was able to survive the concentration camp and escape it. He returned to this little town that they were all from, and he warned them all about the danger coming. However, everyone else just mocked him, saying that he was a madman. And since he's a madman, they have no reason to believe him. He desperately went ahead and tried to call out to someone, but no one just listened to him. Not even ELIE himself believed his old master. And then in 1943, they were all forced to wear yellow stars, this is not yellow, but it works enough, as well as give up all their valuable possessions. By 1944, they were all deported to the ghettos and eventually to the concentration camps. They were all jam-packed into cattle cars. And there was this old woman who would just go ahead and scream on about, "There's a fire approaching us, there's a fire approaching us," scaring everyone to death. So they just gag her and tie her up to make her keep quiet. She somehow breaks free from those bonds and starts screaming about fire again. So the men beat her with encouragement from the other men, with her son going ahead and trying to support her while crying. They eventually reach a place called Auschwitz, which they have never heard of in their life. Families are separated, and all of them are forced to do a little selection. So all the first doctors basically just do this: "Are you healthy?" And all you have to do is say yes. The second doctor checks for your teeth, if you have golden tooth, and just for ELIE Wiesel himself, he found he had a golden tooth, which was noted down. ELIE and his father were fortunate enough to be put in the same work camp. But eventually one day, after 2 evacuations, ELIE finally got a swollen foot from all the gold, and it was pretty bloody. He was sent to the medical bay. And then he and his father were told that they were all going to be evacuated, and that the sick would be left behind. ELIE himself pondered on what he should do. His dad didn't know what to do. He decided that he would go after them, because he believed that if he stayed in the sick room, everyone in the sick room would die. He would later regret his choice, because after the war, he found out that all the people in the sick room were just all liberated by the Russians who invaded the camp. However, the decision was made, and they all walked. After the evacuation, they all arrived towards the Buchenwald camp. ELIE's father was very sick, and there was this rabbi who went ahead and gave them a little bit of shelter. When they arrived at the camp, they all just fell flat down on top of each other, making everyone squeeze. However, Juliek and ELIE and his father, Shlomo, were able to find some breathing space. Later, Juliek played the violin, a Bach concerto, and they all fell asleep. The next morning, ELIE found him dead with a crushed violin. After another selection, they were all put into cattle cars and they were sent to another camp. ELIE Wiesel found out his dad had dysentery and wasn't supposed to give him water, but he did anyway. His dad eventually died. Later, another evacuation was ordered, but then all the bombing and the air raids happened, so that evacuation was postponed to the next morning. At 10 a.m. before the evacuation, all the rebels came out and basically did this. They grabbed a bunch of guns and started gunning down the Germans, who were not ready for this. A few days later, the Americans arrived. ELIE was eventually hospitalized because he was so sick, something from poisoning. After 2 weeks of hovering between life and death, he went ahead and survived. He looked at himself in a mirror, and all he saw were 2 pairs of unhaunted eyes that were just looking right at him. So sad and so gloomy. And that is where the book literally ended. ELIE Wiesel himself went ahead and made himself known. Afterwards, he went ahead and lived a big and productive, fulfilling life. We know that. And he was able to differentiate himself from that little corpse that we saw earlier. He was a man of many talents, and all we could say of him is that he was brilliant. ELIE Wiesel wrote Night not to make us pity him, but to make us remember it. Remember the Holocaust. because the ones remembered are the ones who have the burden of the moral right of remembering the Holocaust for others to make sure that none of this happens again. Holocaust survivors are very small in number now. I'm pretty sure the oldest Holocaust survivor is 90 years old at most. 100 at most, that is. I doubt they would be able to live to 100. But there are still survivors, so few and many. ELIE himself died 9 years ago. And all I can say is, we become witnesses when we listen to a witness's account. So once you read the book, never forget these experiences, and share them, so nothing like this can ever happen again. That is so true in today's era, full of war, and lots of other conflicts. I'll see you guys in the review. Bye-bye!